So I want to speak to you guys today about something that's affecting pretty much all of us, processed food addiction. So it's been 2.5 years since I started dietary changes. And when I first started, it felt like a new life. Clarity, cravings, withdrawals were just that first week, and then they went away. I felt good. My blood sugar levels dropped, I was losing weight. My progress was immediate, right? And I just felt amazing. And I'm like, this is my new way of life. This is it. This is gonna be, and it's so easy, right? That's what I was thinking. This is just, how could I not have done this a long time ago? So as I continued over the next year, I lost more weight, more joint swelling went down, I was able to do things again. I just felt good. So then my weight loss began to plateau, right? We were just talking about that. So I wasn't gaining weight, but I all of a sudden wasn't getting all that excitement from losing weight. My blood sugar levels, they were staying really good, but that became just like a mundane, everyday thing. I wasn't getting these amazing gains anymore. I was just, living the life, right? So that feeling of excitement with the progress turned more into frustration with lack of continued progress. And I started to obsess over things. I was obsessed over my weight. I would obsess over, why my A1C went up a 1/10 of a point, things like that. And as that started happening, I started thinking more and more about foods that I had long since given up. I began rationalizing that I'm gonna go over here. It's just gonna be a one-time thing. I had a bad day. I'll stop. It's just gonna be a one-time thing. But I couldn't stop. Next time I had a rough day at work, found myself pulling into the drive-thru just like I used to, right? And I knew I could ruin everything that I had accomplished and that these foods were not good for me, but I could not stop myself. And I just couldn't understand it. So I started gaining weight again a little bit, not a lot, like 20 pounds total, but it was frustrating me even more. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't stop. I knew I was endangering my health again, and I just felt, I was kind of like ashamed that I could not control myself. So then, about 1.5 years ago, I watched a presentation given by Dr. John Mikel at a low-carb symposium. And thank you, Dr. Hammer. He actually gave me the ability to watch it over online and everything like that. It was something you had to pay to see. At this symposium, she talked about low-carb addiction, and it completely changed my understanding of what I was going through. She explained the difference between dopamine and all these hormones on our brains and what they do, and how certain foods stimulate the same receptors as opiates and narcotics, other drugs. I learned that the original excitement and renewed energy that my progress had given me was basically giving me a dopamine rush. I was getting a high off of my success. My body didn't need that rush it was getting before from the processed food because I found a way to get a new rush of dopamine. So when that started to stall, when it started to go away, I started to feel those urges and cravings and all those things again. So my processed food addiction was still there. And when we have an addiction, the most primal part of our brain, the lizard brain, takes over. And when that takes over in our heads, we don't have a way to control it. It's I got a little thing on my cue card that says push button. So we can't stop ourselves even when we know it, and it's bad for us. Once we're triggered, we lose all our willpower, right? So it all made sense to me. I had an unresolved addiction, and if left unresolved, it's really, really hard to continue this type of lifestyle because they will creep back. So society doesn't recognize it as a disease or an addiction, but sugars, unhealthy fats, processed food are just as addictive as any of these other drugs. And in rats, they will choose sugar over heroin. So that shows you what kind of an addiction that we are dealing with. So this is kind of what we go through, especially when we're on keto. We start out, we're eating processed food, we're all addicted to it. We may not recognize that we're addicted to it, but most of us are. Then, what do? We increase fats, right? That's what they tell us to do, add fats, okay? So then we start adding a lot of fat because you can add as much fat as you want, right? You won't get fat if you add too much fat. No. Okay, so we become then addicted to the fat that we're eating, okay? Then what happens is, this is what kind of happened with me, incubation of sucrose cravings. So that addiction was still there. I never resolved it. I never resolved the issues that were causing me to have those problems. And so when things got hard, my body went right back to that same thing. Now, I relapsed into carb addiction, combine it with my fat addiction, and now I'm back to having problems with metabolic health being poor again, right? Now, it never got really bad because I was lucky enough to see this video and understand what I was going through and why my body was doing what it was doing. So, here are some similarities between processed food and drugs. Cravings and obsessive thoughts. We continue to use despite knowing the harm to our health. We repeatedly fail to stop or even just cut back. And when we try to stop, we experience withdrawals. Okay? We may not be capable of stopping on our own. Both addictions create Pavlovian conditioning, right? Our brain just gets taken over and we can't control it. And with these repeated cues and triggers, we can't stop ourselves. Both addictions involve denial and hiding the problem. I mean, how many of us here tried to hide the fact that we can't stop eating or would go into another room to eat or anything like that? These are all the same traits that we see in people that are addicted to drugs. Has a large cost to society. So, for example, the healthcare system, right? Big burden on it when we're not metabolically healthy. Both result in large number of physical and mental illnesses. A lot of our mental illnesses are caused by processed food addictions. And then also, they lead to a deterioration of employment, relationships, social activities. How many people do we know that eat a lot of this type of food and they don't want to go out and be around people? They don't want to be around those people. And a lot of it has to stem with the food that we're eating. And then we need to continue to use or eat to get rewarded. We need that continued eating so that we can get rewarded. So the most important thing to know is all these things are treatable, right? But first we need to know, am I addicted, right? So you can take a little self-test. So do you have cravings or strong desires or urges to eat processed food? Just ask yourself these questions. Have you tried to cut down or stop eating certain foods, but you've been unable to do so? No matter how hard you try, you can't do it. Do you have withdrawal symptoms when you cut down? There's a whole bunch of them, like hands shaking, feeling depressed, feeling agitated, feeling anxious, feeling tired. And then do you eat to alleviate those symptoms? So has your eating caused emotional problems like depression or anxiety, difficulty sleeping, or constant tiredness? And has your eating ever caused physical problems or made them worse? So how many of us here have had a physical problem that was caused by our insulin resistance or caused by our high blood sugars, right? And it's all linked to our addiction to carbohydrates. And then you eat even when it's dangerous to do so, even while driving, right? That's where you go through the drive-thru and then you got to eat it all before you get home because you're hiding what you're eating, right? Okay. So do you do that? Do you need to eat a lot more in order to get that feeling you want? You constantly feel like you got to eat more and more to get that reward. Okay? So here's the big thing. It's not your fault. Okay? This addiction is started when you were young, right? Think about the foods we eat as children now. Okay? Sugary cereals, right? Even the baby formulas that we use, a lot of those have a lot of sugar type things in them. all kinds of things that we are addicted to at an early age. Big tobacco owns most of our food, which I did not know this, but Philip Morris owns General Foods and Kraft. Basically, back in the 80s, when everybody realized, oh, cigarettes are killing people, they had to branch out into other food industries to, keep going. And they learned that food is very addictive. And so they would look for ways to add sugars, to add the unhealthy fats, to add excessive salt, to create a bliss point and make you not be able to stop eating. Okay, who knows the jingle? Once you pop, you can't stop. That is like truth in advertising. It is so true. You cannot stop yourself from eating it. And it's all because they've learned of these addictive properties. So let's go over some myths of like relapsing. This time I need my cue cards because I have the answers down here. So, relapse is a sign of recovery or recovery failure. Okay? In fact, having a relapse is not a sign that you were a failure or that your recovery is flawed. It simply means you've made a misstep, one that you can avoid with greater awareness. Having a slip can be compared to falling on ice. So once you fall on ice, does that mean you're hopelessly clumsy for the rest of your life? No, you get back up and you walk more carefully, right? And next time you see ice, what do? You walk more carefully, okay? So we can learn from those relapses. Next, relapse is a sign of poor motivation. I mean, how many of us have heard that, right? You just can't stop yourself from eating. It's your fault. You're just not motivated enough, right? The tendency to relapse is a natural part of the addictive disease, and even people who are highly motivated and sincere about the recovery will slip. Almost everyone that does this slips. Relapse starts the moment you take that first bite. In fact, that's the last stage, okay? When we relapse, we have to look what started me on that road. What cues, what triggers started me on that road. Once you're in the drive-thru and you're paying for your hamburger, you relapsed a long time ago. This is just the end result of what you did. So we have to think about what's causing me to relapse. Relapse is unpredictable and unavoidable. It hits you out of the blue, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's unavoidable. And in fact, since relapse begins well before you actually take that first bite, there are many warning signs. Having an addictive disease means you lose control once you expose yourself to the addiction, and then it escalates rapidly out of control. But you do have control over whether or not you put yourself in those situations. So awareness becomes incredibly important. Am I in a situation where I'm going to go to the drive-thru? Am I in a situation where I'm going to go steal my kids' fruit snacks, right? Don't put yourself in those situations, and then it'll be a lot easier to manage. And then relapse cancels out all progress up to that point. This is one that I really want to strike home. I'm sure every one of us here have relapsed, okay? Everybody falls off the wagon, right? The important thing is we get back on that wagon. Our brain, it takes these, the easiest path to get reward, right? That's what our brain does. So it used to be processed food. That was the easiest path. It was a well-worn, it was like a freeway, right? It was I-15 at 5 o'clock in the morning, nobody on it. You can go as fast as you want, right? That's what your processed food addiction was. Then you started doing keto, you started getting metabolically healthy, and you found new pathways, okay? Well, then you fall off the wagon. Okay, that pathway is still there. It's just easier for our brain to go to that good old trusted, freeway down the road, okay? So we just have to keep making sure we're making those right decisions, and those rough spots on the path are gonna get smoothed out. It's gonna be an easier journey for your brain to take next time. And so if relapse isn't the end of recovery, it's okay to have a relapse, right? Well, no, even though it's not the end of your journey because you had a relapse, you're going down that path again, and it can quickly spiral out of control, and you can go back to all those things that made you, want to change in the first place very quickly. So here's some tips just kind of help you get through any kind of addiction feelings. First, manage stress, cues, and triggers. We have many stressors in our lives: work, traffic, family life, family problems. A lot of those are not possible to get rid of, but managing them, finding ways to manage them can help a lot, okay? Then look for cues and triggers. So next time you have a relapse, right? I'm not saying you're never gonna have one, right? You're gonna have one. The next time you have one, think back. What was I doing before that's happened? What caused this? Start driving some awareness as to what's causing the trigger. And then a slow and steady pace of eliminating foods. So a lot of us, some people can quit cold turkey, right? Get rid of all foods and they're good. Most people can't do it that way. Start small. Maybe don't eat any bad foods one day out of the week. Have a shelf on the fridge that's just for clean foods that you know you can go to that's safe, right? And then maybe try eliminating one food. And then when you feel good, do another one. Every time it's more and more progress and you're making progress. If you try to give it all up at once, you'll probably have a hard time and end up relapsing again. And then practice self-care. Look for ways that make you happy. Get a massage, go for walks, get exercise, all kinds of things can help you out. So make small, meaningful changes. Just try and do things that are going to give you a bit of a happiness and that dopamine release in your brain that allows you to just feel better. And then connect with other people. So I actually joined this first one, the Addiction Reset community. I'm actually learning how to help people with food addiction. It's become something I'm really passionate about. And they're just a great community of like-minded people that you can go and you can be with them, and it's all online. Food Addicts Anonymous is another one where they can just help you get the help you need and just be around people that are going through the same thing as you. It doesn't have to be online people though. Look for friends and family and see if they want to take this new journey with you. Most likely your family member, your friends, they're dealing with these same problems. They may not have diabetes, but they're probably dealing with processed food addiction nonetheless. See if they want to go with you on this journey, and you know, like, you can hold each other accountable and you can talk to each other when you have a problem, talk each other down off that cliff instead of going to the fast food restaurant. Don't ever give up. Keep doing it. You're going to be able to get through it. I had to try and try again. I had to find out what made me happy. And it's important that you look for multiple sources of things that make you happy, right? Don't center all your things around food, even the clean food, right? Because if all we're ever doing is getting rewarded for our food choices, we're not going to get over the addictions that we have. So if exercising gives you that dopamine raise, go for an exercise. If being around family, just playing a board game, you know, do those kind of things. Look for ways to get that dopamine rush in your brain that doesn't involve eating food, and it makes it a lot easier the next time you have an urge to overcome it because you have other avenues for your brain. Thank you.